want to do a little follow-up to my breakfast video, which I published a couple of days ago, where I showed you how my breakfast changed over time. And if you haven't seen it yet, feel free to go and watch it first. Basically, it went from something very simple, like a slice of bread with a basic topping, for example, a bit of cottage cheese or ham, to more of a full meal that looked something like this. And what I realized over time is that the main issue was that the base of it was always wheat. So it was essentially making up most of the meal, and the more nutrient-dense foods were only a small part of it. So what that creates is that your body, especially in the morning, is mostly getting something that is closer to a quick source of energy, with maybe just a bit of fat and protein at best. But overall, it is still missing a lot in terms of nutrients, like protein, fats and fiber. So in a way, it is more like a snack than an actual meal. Now you could say, okay, just switch to whole wheat. And yes, I understand that point. But in my experience, it does not really solve the issue, because the base is still the same and it is still not very rich in essential nutrients. So you have essentially just created a slightly different version of the same thing, which from my experience will not work much better either, because it still does not solve the issue of important building blocks that are missing. Now I also want to say that I'm not against bread. I'm actually on the side of white bread, because it has consistently performed the best for my digestion and therefore also for my skin. If it is a simple bread made with just flour, water, yeast and salt, or a sourdough version, which I personally like the most, then it can be completely fine. Personally, I'm not a big fan of darker breads because they are not as easy for me to digest. A few whole grains here and there are fine, but the heavier versions have always caused problems for me, so I do not really enjoy eating them. And the thing is, when I was traveling around the world, in places where bread is commonly eaten, it was mostly white bread. In many cultures, bread is not the base of the meal, but more of a side. For example, if you look at the Mediterranean meals, the main part is usually things like vegetables, fish, meat, eggs and cheese. Sometimes also fruit. So the plate is built around those foods, and bread is something that is just added on the side, not the foundation of the meal. And you can see something similar in parts of Asia as well. For example, something like banh mi from Vietnam. The bread is actually a relatively small part, and what really matters are the toppings, the meat, the vegetables, the herbs. And that is exactly the approach that I would recommend. So instead of building your meal around bread, you build it around something nutrient-dense. For example, eggs, fish, chicken, or even potatoes, along with some fruit like cucumber or tomatoes. And then you add the bread as a side if you want to. That way you can still enjoy it, whether it is toasted or fresh, and you can also put a little bit of like jam or something sweet on it. And in that sense, the jam is not really the issue anymore, because it is no longer the main part of the meal. And that changes everything, because now the nutrients come from the main parts of your meal, and the bread just adds to it. From my experience, this makes the meal much more satisfying and also much better for your overall health. And one more thing, speaking from my experience, white bread only really becomes an issue when it is highly processed and full of additives. So the kind of bread you find in supermarkets that is already packaged, often pre-sliced and shaped in like a typical toast, is something I would avoid, because that is where white bread really starts to become an issue. But if it is simple, as I mentioned before, just flour, water, yeast and salt, then it can actually be a very enjoyable addition. So in that sense, enjoy your white bread. Just make sure that the rest of your meal is nutrient-dense. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!